He entered the courtroom quietly, shoulders straight, eyes forward, giving nothing away. Reporters watched him closely, but Rae tried to look calm, composed, and entirely unbothered by what surrounded him. To many, he still looked like the charismatic NFL wide receiver they once admired. But inside the room, the contrast felt sharp. His confidence now appeared guarded, practiced, and tense. Before the trial, Rae had carefully crafted a public image of discipline and control. Coaches spoke of dedication. Fans saw talent. Yet those close noticed an intensity that sometimes hardened into fear. Cherica Adams met him when hope still outweighed caution. She was warm, supportive, and saw his success as inspiring. Their connection felt genuine at first, almost effortless, promising stability and shared direction. But when Cherica became pregnant, something shifted. Rae's concern about reputation, finances, and image clashed with the idea of fatherhood. Control mattered more to him than change. On the night of the incident, Cherica followed Rae's car down a quiet road. Another vehicle approached. What happened next devastated families and altered futures without warning or time to understand. Despite her injuries, Cherica found the strength to call for help. She spoke clearly, explaining what happened and identifying Rae's involvement. Her determination became the heart of the case. Investigators traced calls, movements, and connections. Testimonies and records formed a pattern. The story that emerged was one of planning, pressure, and a desperate attempt to avoid responsibility. In court, emotional testimony contrasted Rae's stillness. The jury listened closely and eventually reached their decision. Guilty. The sentencing confirmed the gravity of the choices made. Cherica's son survived, living with lasting challenges yet remarkable resilience. His life stands as living reminder of consequences, courage, and the cost of control. To the public, Rae Carruth appeared polished and composed, someone who understood how to carry himself under bright lights. Teammates saw confidence, fans saw talent, and coaches valued his discipline. He learned early how to speak in interviews, how to smile on camera, and how to present charm. His public persona was smooth, measured, and always controlled. But those who spent time beyond the spotlight noticed something quieter beneath his behavior. There was intensity in his expectations, and disappointment sometimes shifted quickly into quiet frustration. His success in football reinforced the idea that control was strength. If he stayed composed, he believed outcomes would bend his way. Confidence became something he performed constantly. Friends occasionally felt distance from him, as if he held parts of himself separate and unreachable. He shared presence, but rarely vulnerability, keeping emotional expression tightly guarded. In private moments, he valued predictability. Anything uncertain or unplanned unsettled him. When circumstances shifted outside his control, his calm exterior could tighten into rigid silence. The closer someone got to him, the more clearly that pattern became visible. His charm remained, but it was deliberate, chosen, and placed rather than naturally unfolding. When relationships introduced expectations he did not initiate, Rae sometimes responded with withdrawal. He believed stability required control, not compromise, shaping how he interacted. To him, maintaining image was survival. Public approval reinforced identity, while private decisions were guided by fear of losing that carefully constructed balance. This contrast between public grace and private strain shaped every step of the story that eventually unfolded in court, where image could no longer cover intention. Cherica Adams met Rae during a period where his fame was steady and his image still intact. She saw someone successful, focused, and confident in his direction. Their connection began softly, without force. Conversations felt easy, and Rae seemed attentive. Cherica believed she was entering a relationship built on trust, ambition, and possibility. She carried a warm and hopeful personality. Friends described her as caring, thoughtful, and steady. She wished for a simple future built on shared support and stability. Rae enjoyed being admired, and Cherica admired him. Their relationship seemed balanced at first, two people drawn together by attraction and mutual interest. Affection appeared natural. But small moments began revealing shifts beneath the surface. Rae kept emotional distance, avoiding deep conversations about feelings, vulnerability, or long-term commitment. His calm sometimes felt like separation. Cherica tried to understand him, believing time and patience could bring closeness. She did not pressure him. Her approach was gentle, rooted in compassion rather than demand. As months passed, Rae's silence during emotional topics became more noticeable. Communication felt one-sided. Cherica provided reassurance, while Rae offered presence, but not openness. Yet, despite their differences, she remained hopeful. She believed people grow at different speeds and allowed space for him to meet her emotionally when ready. When Cherica learned she was pregnant, her hope for stability increased. She imagined building a family, creating a supportive environment where love and responsibility guided decisions. Rae, however, did not respond with the same warmth. His reaction was quiet, tense, and uncertain. The pregnancy did not represent new beginnings to him. It represented losing control he worked carefully to maintain. When Rae learned Cherica was pregnant, his internal world shifted sharply. This was not part of the future he imagined. It represented responsibility he did not feel prepared to accept. To those around him, the change appeared subtle. His tone grew quieter, his expression tightened slightly, and his presence felt more distant. But Cherica noticed immediately, in ways silence communicates. Rae valued control in all parts of his life. Image, reputation, career trajectory. Each was carefully shaped. The pregnancy introduced something unpredictable, something he could not fully direct or manage. He worried about financial expectations, long-term commitments, and how fatherhood might affect public perception. He feared being judged as irresponsible, unprepared, or careless in his private choices. Instead of expressing these fears directly, he withdrew. Conversations that once felt easy became short and tense. Cherica tried to reassure him, but reassurance requires openness to be received. She offered understanding, not pressure. She believed communication could mend distance, yet Rae remained guarded, unwilling to show vulnerability or uncertainty. His silence became heavier with each passing week. Friends noticed the shift in his demeanor. They saw frustration simmering beneath calm surfaces, though Rae continued to speak carefully in public. The contrast between appearances deepened. Privately, Rae began seeking control through decisions rather than dialogue. He attempted to shape outcomes instead of adapting to change. His desire to protect his image overshadowed emotional responsibility. Cherica remained hopeful, believing patience and empathy could restore connection. She trusted that the man she cared for could learn to embrace fatherhood in time. But Rae viewed the pregnancy not as a new beginning, but as a threat to the stability and identity he had spent years constructing. That belief set the stage for everything that would follow. On the night of the incident, Cherica followed Rae's car down a quiet stretch of road. It seemed like just another drive, familiar and unremarkable at first. The street was dimly lit, lined with trees, offering little visibility. There were no crowds, no traffic, nothing to suggest danger was close. Everything appeared calm. Rae's car slowed slightly. and Cherica adjusted her speed to match. She had no reason to feel alarmed. Their communication earlier had seemed normal enough. Then another vehicle approached from behind, closing in with purposeful timing. It did not look accidental. The placement of the cars formed a pattern Cherica did not yet understand. Confusion came first, sharp and sudden. The situation shifted from ordinary to alarming in seconds. The quiet street became a setting for a decision already made without her knowledge. She realized something was wrong, but there was no chance to react meaningfully. The moment unfolded quickly, before her instincts could translate into action. The event was devastating, sudden, and irreversible. The consequences would reach far beyond the road, the night, and the people present. Nothing could be undone. Rae drove away, leaving Cherica behind. His car continued forward as if distance could remove involvement or responsibility. Silence followed where explanation should have been. Cherica, injured and shaken, found herself alone, relying only on her strength and will to survive. She knew she needed help immediately to protect her life and her unborn child. The decision she made next, to call for help and speak, would become the center of the entire case, revealing clarity in a moment designed to erase witness and truth. Despite her injuries, Cherica managed to remain conscious. The pain was overwhelming, but her determination was stronger. She understood her survival depended on communicating clearly and quickly. With effort, she reached for her phone. Every movement required focus and will. She dialed emergency services, her voice strained yet steady enough to be understood. She did not panic. In the call, she explained what happened. She described the cars, the timing, and most importantly, Rae's involvement. Her words became the anchor of the entire case's foundation. The dispatcher listened carefully, guiding her to stay alert while help traveled. Cherica spoke through pain, prioritizing clarity over fear. Her resilience in that moment was extraordinary. Medical teams arrived as fast as possible. They stabilized her and transported her to the hospital. Her condition was critical, but she continued fighting for her child's life. At the hospital, doctors worked urgently. Cherica's injuries required immediate attention, and her unborn son's survival depended on swift medical intervention. The situation was desperate, fragile, and uncertain. Despite trauma, Cherica remained aware. She repeated details to hospital staff, ensuring her statements were documented. Her testimony became both evidence and final act of courage. Her family arrived, surrounding her with emotional support. Their concern was heavy, but so was their admiration. They saw how hard she fought to protect her child. The medical team delivered her son prematurely, doing everything possible to preserve his future. His condition was delicate, requiring continuous care and long-term support to survive. Cherica's words, strength, and final efforts ensured the truth was recorded. Her voice remained present long after, shaping the investigation, the courtroom, and the legacy of this case. He sat in the courtroom with a face that tried to stay calm, but everyone watching could see the pressure building beneath. The room was silent and tense. The prosecution laid out every detail slowly, piece by piece, describing calls, timing, and movements. Each fact felt heavier than the last, tightening the air around him. Witnesses stepped forward, some hesitant, others steady. Their voices carried the weight of memory, of fear, of regret. The courtroom listened closely to every syllable. Rae's defense argued that he never planned for harm to happen, that he had been reacting to panic and personal chaos. They tried to soften his intentions carefully, but the evidence was stronger than emotion. Phone logs, messages, and testimony formed a chain difficult to break. Every link pointed toward planning, not accident or confusion. The jurors watched him closely. They watched how he sat, how he breathed, how his face changed when certain details were spoken aloud. Nothing went unnoticed in that room. The victim's family sat only a few feet away, carrying quiet grief. Their presence alone reminded everyone of what could not be undone anymore. The tension rose whenever the name of the unborn child was mentioned. The room always paused then, as if honoring someone who never got a chance to speak. Reporters typed in near silence, knowing every word in that courtroom would echo outside. The case had already captured national attention. And through all of it, Rae kept his eyes forward, realizing slowly that this moment, this courtroom, would define him far longer than football ever could. The emotional weight in the courtroom grew heavier each day. Every testimony added another layer of understanding, another window into what had happened and why it mattered so deeply. Medical professionals described Cherica's strength with steady voices, explaining how she fought to give her child a chance. Their words carried quiet admiration and profound sadness together. Family members spoke with controlled emotion, sharing memories of Cherica's kindness, warmth, and resilience. Their voices trembled at times, but they continued, honoring her courage with honesty and clarity. Friends recalled moments before her relationship changed, noticing shifts in Rae's behavior. They spoke gently, careful not to dramatize, but unwilling to ignore what they had seen. The prosecution focused on intention, not emotion. They emphasized patterns, communication trails, and timing. Their presentation was deliberate, measured, and clear, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. Rae listened with little visible reaction, maintaining his calm posture. But there were moments when his jaw tightened or his eyes shifted, revealing strain beneath practiced composure. The defense tried to redirect attention toward uncertainty, suggesting fear, miscommunication, and pressure rather than deliberate planning. They attempted to humanize Rae, to show complexity instead of calculation. Even so, the contrast between testimonies made the decision feel less complicated. The narrative forming in the courtroom was steady, firm, and grounded in documented truth rather than speculation. The jurors remained focused, taking notes, watching every small shift in tone and expression. Their responsibility weighed visibly, but they remained composed and attentive. As testimony continued, it became clear the case was not just about tragedy. It was about choice, responsibility, and the irreversible impact one decision could leave on many lives. When the jury left the courtroom to deliberate, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The room felt suspended, like time had slowed, holding everyone in place without direction or closure. Rae sat still at the defense table, hands folded, his posture controlled. Yet the earlier confidence had softened. His breathing was slower, deeper, more deliberate than before. Family members on both sides leaned into quiet prayer, reflection, or silence. No one spoke loudly. Fear and hope existed side by side, separated only by perspective. Outside the courtroom, reporters whispered predictions. The case had captured national attention, and every possible outcome was being discussed in low voices across hallways and newsrooms. The jury took their time, reviewing evidence, testimonies, timelines, intentions, and consequences. Their duty required patience, clarity, and emotional distance, though emotion was impossible to fully remove. Inside the deliberation room, each member confronted their own reasoning. Some focused on facts, others on values, all knowing the weight of their decision would follow them forever. Hours passed, and the courtroom remained still. Rae's expression stayed composed. But the quiet cracks beneath his calm were clearer now. Control was no longer guaranteed. His attorney whispered occasionally, trying to maintain confidence, reminding him to breathe, to remain steady. But reassurance struggled against the reality unfolding. Finally, footsteps signaled the jury's return. Everyone took their seats. Hearts beat faster. The moment had arrived. No more speculation, no more waiting. The future was about to be spoken aloud. The foreperson carried the verdict with steady hands, prepared to deliver the words that would determine Rae's fate. The room held its breath once more, knowing life was about to change. After the verdict and sentencing, the courtroom slowly emptied, but the impact of the case remained. Lives had been reshaped, futures altered, and the weight of the choices lingered quietly. Cherica's family carried both grief and pride. They mourned her loss deeply, yet they honored her strength. Her final actions protected her child and ensured the truth was spoken. Her son survived, born prematurely and facing lifelong medical challenges. His journey would require resilience, patience, and support. Yet from the beginning, he demonstrated remarkable courage and determination. Relatives and caregivers surrounded him with love, ensuring he grew up knowing the story of his mother's bravery rather than only the tragedy of circumstances. His life became testimony. As he grew older, he became a symbol of perseverance. Community members followed his progress, inspired by the dignity and warmth he carried into every moment of his life. Meanwhile, Rae served his sentence, his world no longer shaped by crowds, stadiums, or applause. His life narrowed, defined by reflection, consequence, and the absence of control he once valued. The contrast between their lives illustrated the lasting impact of choices made in fear and control versus choices made in love and courage. The difference remained undeniable and permanent. Cherica's story continued to be told, not as only a tragedy, but as a reminder of strength in impossible circumstances. Her voice remained through records, memories, and her son's existence. The case encouraged conversations about responsibility, emotional maturity, and the dangers of valuing image over connection. People reflected on how control can distort judgment and overshadow empathy. In the end, this story became less about fame or crime and more about humanity, the cost of ego, the endurance of love, and the quiet power of courage during the hardest moments.